Welcome to Cenegenics Live. Are you concerned about healthcare? On the line, we have Dr. Mickey Barber, AIDS Management Specialist and CEO, CMO of Cenegenics Carolinas, as well as Dr. Robert Willix, Chief Medical Officer of Cenegenics Medical Institute and CEO, CMO of Cenegenics Boca Raton. Please stay tuned to ask your questions of Dr. Mickey Barber and Dr. Willix after their interview.
Well, good evening, and welcome to all of you that are on this call tonight. We want to thank Dr. Bob Willix for joining us on this call tonight. And as Carrie mentioned, Dr. Willix is the CEO and CMO of Cenegenics Boca Raton and the Chief Medical Officer for Cenegenics Medical Institute. And he is one of my very good friends, a colleague, and a mentor. And we're glad that Bob is here with us tonight. Thank you, Bob.
It's very exciting to be here. It's a long distance between you and me, but it's nice to hear your voice, and good talking to you, Nick. So.
Yeah, good. So we're going to talk about the future of healthcare, but before we get into that, I wanted to talk about your past and your history.
The good past or the bad past?
The good past, and your history as a practicing physician. For those of you that don't know it, Dr. Bob Willix was originally a cardiac surgeon, and, I imagine that you had a pretty thriving practice as a cardiac surgeon. Can you tell us a little bit about your history and medical education?
Sure. I did my MD-PH work at University of Missouri, then went on to University of Michigan, where I trained in cardiovascular surgery, and then started the first open heart surgery program in the state of South Dakota. While I was growing my cardiac surgical practice, I became enamored with nutrition and exercise. So during the course of my cardiac surgical career, after doing about 3,000 operations, I actually started having an epiphany about my own health. And that was really what changed my career. It was me. I started looking at how healthy I was as a physician, and my colleagues, how healthy they were. I started wondering how we were teaching people to be healthy when we actually weren't paying much attention to health at all. So
so you were an athlete in college, and I imagine you were, at least you thought you were in pretty good shape when you were a practicing physician. So
I always said I was an athlete, and as a physician, I thought, somebody asked me once, whether or not I could run in a 3-mile race. And I said, what are you talking about? Of course, that's, 3 miles. Why don't I do the 9-mile race with you? So, a typical cardiac surgical answer, I could do more than I played tennis every day. I thought I was in shape, but one day I found out I wasn't in the kind of shape I wanted to be in, and that really changed my life for a lot of reasons. A lot of things changed doing a 3-mile race in Yankton, South Dakota.
Really? So did you have trouble keeping up with the other people running, or what happened?
Well, there weren't many runners at the time, but I did have 3 medical students that were running the race with me, and I'll never forget the look on their face when I was crossing the finish line. I thought they were about to, get me to resuscitate somebody. They looked like they were in shock. And I said, are you guys okay? And they said, yeah, we're okay, but we didn't think you were going to make it, Doc. So I realized that I must have been the one they were concerned about. And as it turned out, that 3-mile race took a lot of energy out of me, and I found myself becoming an athlete again. And really that changed my life in many ways. I changed my nutrition. I really started thinking about what we did in medicine and how to make those changes for our patients. And a lot of things happened. I got to tell you, for me personally, I lost, over 50 pounds, even though I didn't think I was that overweight, and became a vegetarian and started training and running marathons. And it just was incredible what happened to the way I felt once I got back into into physical conditioning. And I'm sure you and a lot of people on the call realize that, you always think you're 18 or 16, but when you're actually put to the challenge of doing something that a 16 or 18-year-old does. You can't always do it. And today I can honestly say that since then I've never been out of shape, not since I found out that I was physically deconditioned and I wasn't quite the athlete I thought.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your cardiac surgery practice. So,
yeah.
I mean, that, you say you took care of 3,000 plus people, and you must have been helping people. I mean, did you feel like you were helping people, or was something missing?
No, I obviously I felt like I was helping people. I went through all that training. If I didn't think I was helping people, I thought I should be examined. But I didn't think they kept, I thought here are people who are at, you've got their heart exposed, and yet they don't make lifestyle changes that last forever. So I thought I was helping people by, giving them a second chance, but they didn't seem to want the second chance. And one day I was operating on a 34-year-old man, and that really changed my life because I was about 33 at the time, and he was 34. And there were a lot of similarities between he and I, some of which were frightening. Like neither one of us had a family history of heart disease. Neither one of us had high cholesterol. Neither one of us had smoked. Neither one of us had other risk factors for heart disease. But there he was, me operating on his heart, and he was overweight, I was overweight. He didn't exercise, I didn't exercise. He had a high-stress job, and I had a high-stress job. And it really opened my eyes up to the fact that I was operating on myself, in a sense. I mean, it became that kind of epiphany.
So when that happened and you felt like you were out of shape, and so you decided to take some time off. So tell us a bit about that journey.
Well, first, before I took time off, I started doing other things like telling people that I was operating on that I wouldn't operate on them if they didn't quit smoking or if they didn't exercise. So I did things before I actually took a leave of absence. But my journey started by me taking a 30-day leave of absence, and I never went back to the operating room. I thought I would, but I never did. My journey then was I found a guy by the name of Dr. Ken Cooper, who was the founder of the Aerobics Institute in Dallas, Texas, and I saw that he was practicing a kind of medicine that taught about exercise and nutrition, and he was very into exercise mostly, not nutrition so much, but aerobics was the term he coined. And I figured if one guy could do preventive medicine, there's got to be room in the country for two of us. And I literally made a decision to look for a position teaching preventive medicine, and I was recruited to go to Florida to start cardiac rehabilitation programs for heart patients and to actually run what was called a human performance lab for all the people in the hospital and in the school system in Broward County, Florida. And so I was the first physician to start a cardiac rehabilitation and human performance program in Florida, and had at that time I left my cardiac surgical practice and uprooted my family and relocated to Florida and went from making a lot of money to very, very little money in one short year. But I've never looked back and regretted it. So it started with my lifestyle changes, and it started then with teaching other people lifestyle changes. So that journey was really interesting. I really enjoyed, I started running marathons and eventually got into triathlons and have done a lot of athletic things since then.
Well, let's talk about, I believe that you were introduced to this at some point when you were doing cardiac rehab, of a test that we do now in our Cenegenics executive evaluation and annual evaluations, which is the VO2 max. And maybe you could explain a little bit about that, and let's talk about that in comparison to a stress test, for example, which I'm sure most people on the call are familiar with.
Well, I didn't get introduced to the VO2 max. When I left heart surgery, I was looking for a way because the testing that we were doing at the time didn't really reveal heart disease until you really had a serious problem. So I was looking for an early marker for heart disease. Mm-hmm. And I came across a way of measuring the body's ability to utilize fuel, just like a car utilizes fuel. And that test was to measure their oxygen consumption, which is putting a mask on their face or a device where you measure oxygen while they're exercising. Now, it's always been used in the athletic community to determine how to train. So I discovered some literature from German scientists that have been looking at physical fitness as a marker for health back actually in the 30s. And there was a lot more advances in measuring oxygen consumption. And oxygen consumption basically turns out to be the measurement of oxygen that your body uses, very much like a car gets measured by its fuel efficiency, how many miles per gallon it gets. The body, the more oxygen you consume, the more fit you are, the more your heart is pumping blood. And I discovered a number called the oxygen pulse, which measures the actual amount of blood that your heart pumps out every single minute. And nothing that existed at the time, and even today, is a more accurate way of determining heart health than a VO2 max. Mm-hmm. So the difference between a VO2 max, however, and a stress test is when they do a stress test, they're looking for an abnormality of either blood flow to the heart by giving you a radioactive marker, or they're looking for electrical disturbances in your electrocardiogram. The VO2 max actually predicts whether or not you're at risk of having heart disease, but it also gives you a much better marker for how healthy your body is. The VO2 max measures lung function and how efficient your lungs are. It measures leg strength and how strong your legs are. So the VO2 max is a much more physiologic test than a stress test. The difference is a stress test looks for disease when you're suspicious. A VO2 max is something that everyone can do and should do to find out how healthy is my heart, my lungs, my legs, how strong am I, and how efficient is my body. If my body fat is high, then I'm going to lose fuel efficiency. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a lot of things to look at. And in addition to that, it warns you ahead of time, I'm at risk for heart disease, not because my cholesterol is elevated, but because my heart is not pumping out as much blood as it should at the age of 45 or 30 or 60 or 65. So it's the VO2 max, in my opinion, is the most simple way of telling someone how healthy their body really is by how much fuel they consume per minute of per milliliter per minute. So it's very much like if a car gets 50 miles to the gallon, if I consume 50 milliliters of oxygen a minute, I'm a very efficient human being. Mm-hmm. And it warns you that the reason your energy level is low is because your VO2 is low, and you can improve that. Everyone. I've taken patients who have had heart attacks and open heart surgery from a functional level where they could barely walk up a flight of stairs to being able to literally run in a race or walk in a 10-kilometer race. So the VO2 max, in my opinion, is a very integral part of what we do at Cenegenics, because very few people in the country have the opportunity to have a physician looking at them from a physical health perspective.
Right. No, you're right. Well, one of the things we want to talk about today is the future of healthcare, and we can't do that very well without talking about what's going on now with, healthcare reform and the way conventional medicine has been taking care of patients. And you and I try to stay out of doctors' offices as much as possible, but for those of us that have had to spend some time in a conventional doctor's office, we're used to waiting a long time in the waiting room, getting to the back, waiting in the back room, waiting for the physician to come in, and spending maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes with the doctor, and many times just being told, well, you need to get your cholesterol down, here's this medication, you need to exercise more, and you need to eat better. And obviously, that's not what we do. But how do you think that doctors got into that, Bob? I mean, what's been going on that's kind of that's the way patients are taken care of now?
The good news of being around as long as I've been around in medicine, I think what happened was medicine became regulated by outside forces. So I don't believe that doctors want it to be the way it is. So in defense of conventional medicine, it's not what we train to do. But the system through insurance-based medicine has created the need for short visits and not enough time to spend with the patients to actually give them the kind of care that they need. So the physicians are trained, in a sense, to deal with the disease only. A good friend of mine, George Sheehan, who died many years ago, once taught me that the problem with modern medicine, and conventional medicine still falls under this, is they only treat disease, they don't treat the illness. And I said to him, George, what does that mean? George was a cardiologist and actually probably the most prominent running physician in history. He wrote for Runner's World and has written many books on running and how it created a health boom. And George said, disease is what they call it, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, whatever it is. But the illness is the physical, the social, and the psychological effect of that disease. So I think the difference between conventional medicine and Cenegenics is we provide people with the ability to change the way they are in society with their own families, with their own businesses. And conventional medicine is still trying to put out the fires. So they wait until you get sick, and then they try to limit the effect of the disease on your health. But they don't really have the time to teach you what it takes to be healthy. So I think Cenegenics is different in that our focus is on proactive health, on prevention of the devastation of the aging process. Their focus in conventional medicine is, I've got to see as many patients as I can see in order to make a decent living, and at the same time, I really don't have time to teach them what exercises to do, how to change their nutrition. It isn't something I'm going to get compensated for, and they're going to have to go somewhere else to learn that. And I think that's what's happened to medicine. It's become an industry that is interested in bigger gadgets, bigger diagnostic tools, and during that time, the focus between the doctor and patient has been lost, not because of the doctors, but because of the system. And I don't see healthcare reform as changing that. All we're doing with healthcare reform is making sure that all the people get cared for. Well, in the old days, everyone was cared for. There wasn't any need for reforming the healthcare system because every physician knew that it was his duty to do pro bono work, and every hospital accepted pro bono patients. Today, nobody is accepting pro bono care. Nobody gives medical care for free. Everybody's got to pay somehow. And that's not the way it was designed.
Well, I think of it like now the physician doesn't really have any power, the patient doesn't really have any power to get better, and the power has been given to the insurance companies, really, and the pharmaceutical companies. So, that means the patient's not happy and the doctors aren't happy, and
right.
It's really, the system's kind of broken. And one of the things that you and I had talked about, too, is that, in medical school still, is really about teaching disease, although they're trying to bring in some more integrated programs. But, we talked about before that, it's a week of nutritional training in medical school. I don't even know.
Well, I'd be surprised if it's even that long. I don't think they get a week of nutrition training. Certainly not in. They may get a week of how nutrition affects disease, but they don't get a week of how to use nutrition to keep people healthy. Because even if you look at the American Heart Association, the American Diabetic Association, even if you look at what they teach, I mean, come on, it doesn't take rocket scientists. How can you say, and I don't mean to pick on one company, because obviously they use it as a way to say, I can lower your cholesterol by eating Cheerios. Now, I mean, how dumb do you think I am? Really. I mean, I can't possibly imagine anyone believing they're going to lower their cholesterol by eating Cheerios or any other single food. I think it's a matter of understanding that nutrition is linked to the diseases of aging, and some of those aging processes cause illnesses that are beyond our understanding. But I think the way medicine is taught in medical schools, there's so much that's been advanced in the last 20 years, it's almost impossible for a physician to learn everything there is about every illness, about every disease, rather. And I think there's not enough room for teaching them how to keep people healthy. There's just no time in the curriculum. There's too much disease to take care of. And I think that's a big difference. I've been told by people at medical schools that there's a mandate that every school has to teach integrated medicine, some form of nutrition or other aspects of health. But I've been on the faculty of the University of Miami Integrated Medicine program for over 11 years, and I can tell you it hasn't changed in the 11 years that I've been involved at the University of Miami. There's been no change in the number of hours that we teach the medical students preventive medicine techniques. None. So I don't see there's not enough time to teach preventive medicine or proactive health.
No, I think
so
you're
we
right.
have to be the teachers, and that's I think the difference between what Cenegenics does. We teach a lot of people. As you know, we teach thousands of people every month about preventive medicine because they call us and they're looking for information about something they saw that they want. They want to be healthy.
That's right.
People want to be healthy. They don't want to get sick. They don't want to be debilitated. They need coaches, and physicians need to be teachers.
Yep, that's right. Well, and you're right. We're talking to people that call in and want information, and then of course when the patients are at our facility, they're there for 5 hours, maybe 6, where they spend 2 hours with their Cenegenics physician. They're spending 2.5 hours with highly trained exercise and nutritional specialists. They're going through a battery of tests and really sitting down and coming up with I tell people, we tell you what you've been doing well and we tell you what you can do better, and we put a plan into place for you that's a plan for your lifetime that we're going to reevaluate and reassess every year and help you come up with new goals and document your progress. So it certainly is a teaching method that we're using every single day. Now, as the medical director,
I tell them that it's the only place where a physician and a team of nutrition and exercise specialists is looking at you from a totally different perspective. We look at, we do over 95 blood tests. We measure certain things about how well your brain is functioning. We measure your body fat and your muscle mass and the efficiency of your heart and lungs. Nobody else is doing that. There's just no place to go to have that kind of evaluation that looks at how healthy am I, and then what can I do to improve my health, and what have I been doing? I think you said it best. We tell them what they've been doing well, not what's wrong with them. I think the difference is we're not in the business of telling you what's wrong with you. We're in the business of telling you how to improve what you have genetically, and through our program of proactive control of nutrition, exercise, measuring and modifying the vitamins you take, the nutraceuticals you take, and at the same time looking at what are the things that we in medicine have learned get damaged during the aging process from the age of 20 till death. And the answer to that is a lot of the deterioration occurs because hormones become low, and the thyroid doesn't function as well, the adrenals don't function as well, the ovaries and testicles, and there's so many different ways that we can improve the health of Americans, and we don't do it in medicine because we're waiting until they break, and then we are going to put a Band-Aid on large wounds. We're about looking at, how do we take you at whatever age you come to us and keep you as healthy as we can, realizing that at some point in time you very well may get sick, but at least you're going to be healthy until that day.
Tell me a little bit, Bob, because you're the Chief Medical Officer for Cenegenics, and that encompasses a lot of patients and a lot of doctors. Tell us some things that you're excited about what's going on with Cenegenics as far as research and affiliations. Bring us up to date a little bit.
Okay, I'm excited for a number of things. First of all, we are training approximately 300 or 400 physicians every year in looking at medicine from a different perspective. So I'm very excited about our educational program. But for the patients that are listening on this call or who are Cenegenics patients, the thing I'm most excited about is we are constantly looking at what are those things that mark the aging process, that we're looking for the 10 most important or 7 most important biologic markers of aging, so that we can look at you today and say, you know what, you're 45, but you have certain things that could be altered that will improve or decrease your chances of aging. So some of the things I'm excited about looking at the DNA of the cells and the telomeres and an enzyme called telomerase and how it can be altered by taking a supplement, a naturally occurring supplement. I'm excited about the value of understanding that stem cells are at their peak at birth, but they deteriorate in age. And for those that don't know what a stem cell is, every organ in your body has regeneration cells. Those cells are stem cells. So your liver has stem cells, your heart has stem cells. I'm excited for those people who have some damage to their joints, some damage to their heart, to know that the future of being able to use stem cells, your own cells, to regenerate the heart, to regenerate joints, will change the way medicine is practiced, and we're on the cutting edge of teaching people now's the time to store your stem cells for the future of where stem cell therapies are going to go over the course of the next 10 years. We're excited about, we're currently investigating the world for centers that are using stem cells to slow the aging process down and to treat certain degenerative diseases with stem cell therapy, and so I'm very excited about that.
Can you mention some of the medical institutions that we're affiliated with, Bob, and some of the things on the horizon there?
We're affiliated currently with the University of Miami, the University of Nevada Medical School, the UCLA, and Cedars-Sinai. We're seriously negotiating and talking to Mount Sinai Hospital, the Mount Sinai Medical Center, medical school in New York City. We are currently doing research with UCLA and have actually had collaborative papers published both with the University of Miami and UCLA in the last 2 years. We have 11 publications with information for heart patients, nutrition, on the value of certain antioxidants and how it protects the body, and certain hormones, how they're important. We're currently developing the Cenegenics biomarkers of aging in collaboration with Nichols Lab in California, which is a brain trust of 140 MDs and MD PhDs who are doing research on the immune system, on the endocrine system, on the central nervous system, and we're trying to jointly identify what the most important blood tests that we could look at, or urine tests, or hair analysis, whatever it is, cellular analysis, that can tell us what things we can change in the aging process through nutrition, through exercise, through taking supplements and nutraceuticals. I'm really excited about the information that we have about low testosterone levels and how it can improve heart function, how it can reduce the risk of degenerative changes in the bones and degenerative brain processes. I think that our approach of looking at aging at the cellular level and how we can help people stay fit, stay healthy, are probably the most exciting things that are going on in all the years I've been in medicine. I think our not-for-profit research foundation is actively looking around the country for medical centers. I know recently we've talked to physicians in South Carolina at medical schools who are looking to collaborate with us because we have the most experience currently in the country and probably in the world on proactive, looking at people from a proactive perspective and health perspective. I know, for example, I was talking to the head of Quest Labs today about the fact that we measure a certain blood test called insulin more than anyone else in the country because we're looking at insulin as a marker, not for diabetes, but as a marker of how you metabolize sugars in your blood and how it's either stored as fat or used as energy according to how insulin levels are. And, you know, they're looking to us. They're coming to us saying, what is your experience with high levels of insulin, and how can we look for other markers that will help people prevent obesity, prevent diabetes, prevent osteoporosis. So I think I could go on for hours about this.
Well, we can't let you do that, Bob.
That's a good thing, and the people on the that are listening, they probably are tired of listening.
Well, we're going to open it up for questions, I think, right now. I think that's a good place. And Carrie is our moderator. So, Carrie, if you could give instruction as to how people could call in with their questions.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Barber. And Dr. Willix will now be accepting questions from the audience. So if you have a question, all you need to do is press the number 1 time on your phone. Again, press the number 1 once, and that will get you into the question queue. And we'll take all those questions in the order in which they are received. So give us just a moment to see if anybody lines up in that queue today. Okay, we do have a question comes from Keith Compton. Keith, your line is open.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Barber, and thanks for the teleconference. I find it very informative, and I've been interested in the wellness program for some time.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, 57-year-old male. I would characterize myself as generally very good condition. I've been working out since my 30s, and as 57, seeing, some joint discomfort, some muscle atrophy, wasting, if you will, I guess based on lower levels of natural hormones and things like that. So far my look at Cenegenics is just, is piqued my interest. And the one thing I guess that really holds me back a little is understanding the cost component and how I might be able to afford, to come in for an evaluation and to continue the healthy lifestyle, that I've sort of espoused for the last 30 years and certainly would like to continue for the next 30 years. First of all, could you help me understand what the initial, I guess kind of to get to the point, what the initial costs are, what they cover, and what I could expect thereafter?
We can, sure. We do an executive health evaluation. I'm just going to start there, and then we can talk at a later date about what ongoing costs are, because
Sure.
we don't really know till we see you, and we don't know whether you would be a candidate for our whole program or for maybe just the exercise and nutritional part. So let me start with the whole program, and that's our executive health evaluation, which, as I said, is about 5 to 6 hours. We look at, as Dr. Willix said, 95 different lab tests. We're going to look at your fitness level and evaluate your fitness level and see what you're doing right, what you could do better, how you can improve your muscle strength, your cardiac or your heart strength. We evaluate your cognitive function, how well your brain is working, and we look at your body composition. We'll know exactly what your body fat is, what your muscle mass is, what your bone density is, and then you'll sit down with your physician and kind of pull all that information together and come up with a plan for you. Now, depending on what institution you would be evaluated at, that would be anywhere from just under $4,000 to around $5,000. So it depends, and that's a conversation we could have one-on-one, but that's a lot of information, a lot of expertise packed into a day, and as Dr. Willix said, you just never have that opportunity to learn that much about your body really from the inside. So Dr. Willix, any comment on that for you?
No, I think you hit everything. I think what he's asking is, what do I get? Well, you're going to get a physician, a nutritionist, an exercise specialist evaluating you, and I've been exercising since I was 8, and so I, like you, have always, followed a healthy lifestyle, but very honestly, I have a Cenegenics program that is monitored by another physician, because it always amazes me at how little things that I personally disregarded for myself have helped me as I've continued to train and exercise. And if you're working out all the time, the biggest problem that happens, and you're probably experiencing that to a certain extent, if you've been exercising since you're 30, the one thing that happens to you is your recovery is not the same as it was when you were 30. And if I could tell you that through some of the things that we do, we're going to bring you back to the level that you were at when you were 30, you'd probably look at whatever that investment is and said, yeah, that would be worth it. So I think it is, people observe the cost of health differently, but from my perspective, it's the best $4,000 you'll ever spend to find out what you need to change.
Yeah,
going forward, I think you're not going to find another program in the country where you get a physician, a nutritionist, an exercise specialist at your disposal that are constantly going to be revising your program. And at some point in time, you would think, well, I don't really need that anymore. But it's interesting that 98% of the people that come to see us start in a Cenegenics program. By the end of a multitude of years, 84% of them, and we've been in business now for 14 years, 84% of the people that come to see us for an evaluation feel that relationship with having a doctor that they can call about any aspect of their health that's knowledgeable, and part of the reason the doctors are knowledgeable is there's not a single Cenegenics physician that doesn't follow a Cenegenics program. It's one of the prerequisites that we have for our physicians. They have to go through the evaluation that you're going through so they know what to experience for themselves and for their family. So as far as the cost is concerned, obviously insurance doesn't cover it, so that's a big issue because we would like to believe in medicine that insurance should cover it. But we tried working with insurance companies. They would much rather spend $75,000 on your open heart surgery than they would spend $10,000 on keeping you healthy. I don't know why, but that's just the way the system is set up. And unfortunately, we have, physicians and centers that we have to keep open, and we've been successful because we have developed a cost structure that keeps us in business and keeps us at the head of the field of preventive medicine.
Yeah, and thanks for that response. And I certainly don't mean to sound penny wise and pound.
No, I didn't take it that way. I think you're absolutely right.
Unfortunately, I'm one of the middle Americans who are caught up in the in the whole financial crunch, and I'm heavily invested in whether or not I like it into the mainstream healthcare industry, that's deducted from paychecks and prescription plans and major medical expenses, and I have to tell you though that I love everything that I hear about Cenegenics, and I want nothing more than to participate in the program because, as I mentioned earlier, I have been a sort of a self-health advocate since my early 30s. As a matter of fact, after hearing about your program, I set up an appointment with an endocrinologist, and I'm not pronouncing that right.
Endocrinologist.
And I went in, and he basically said, "Well, what's your problem? What's your issues?" And I said, "Well, I'm happy to report nothing. I'm here basically for a wellness check, and to check my blood levels and to possibly prescribe anything that would improve my wellness, including any sort of supplements or hormone supplications that may improve my overall well-being and so forth and so on." And frankly, he looked at me like I was nuts. Although I did go for the blood test, it became very onerous on the in that relationship with this particular doctor, where it was apparent to me that he would prefer to treat an illness rather than a wellness.
Right.
Well, I think in his defense, it's out of his. I mean, I always tell people we're in two different fields of medicine. In his defense, all he sees day in and day out are people who aren't like you, and then suddenly you appear and you say, "Well, all I want you to do is keep me this way." And he goes, "Well, I have no idea how to do that." I mean, it'd be like going to a Mercedes dealership and saying, "I want you to tune my Volkswagen so the engine works like a Mercedes." Well,
and actually what I told him, and after the results of my blood test came back with, with all the various elements that were tested, including, testosterone and HGH and other things, much of which I don't know about what I'm talking about. But he said, well, basically for your age, you're pretty much where you need to be. And my response to him was, well, I'm 57, but really I don't want to be 57.
Right.
I'd prefer to be 37 or maybe 47.
Right. Right.
So I didn't want to be treated and compared as a conventional 57-year-old male, because that's really not where my mind is at.
Right. Well, you'll appreciate this. I did the Ironman in 1984, and in 1985 I was training for another Ironman, and I got hit by a car and broke my leg in a multitude of places and lost my competitive career essentially. Never was able to get back to. So it's been 26 years since I did the Ironman. 2 years ago, I was watching my son compete in an Ironman distance event, and at the end of the event, I said, geez, I really miss doing this. I mean, it's been 26.2 years, and so I've made, a cognitive decision that I'm going back to Hawaii. So that's my goal.
Right.
Now, I'm going back to Hawaii, and I will guarantee you that, as long as my feet are on the right side of the dirt, I'll make it. It may take me a year. It may take me 2 years to qualify, but I'm going back to Hawaii. And I'll be damned if I want somebody telling me that I shouldn't be doing that because I've already done it, or because that isn't what guys 69 years old do.
Is that your age?
I don't care what guys 69 years old do.
Yeah, you're going to be 69 or 70 on your birthday, Bob?
70.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just signed up for one of the mini triathlons in August.
So don't accept what your age is. Like you said, you want to be functioning at the highest level your body, mind, and spirit will allow you to, and that's the difference between the way we view you and the way medicine in general. They are so convinced that, you should be getting, you should lose your vigor when you get old. Well, that's not true. You shouldn't.
Let me ask you this question. If and when you come in for the complete analysis, and perhaps there are some nutritional elements, supplements, or whatever that would be part of a regimen to success, let's say, are they available through the Cenegenics program, or do you have to go out into the mainstream pharmaceutical industry to get these things?
No, we have everything available that you need for your program. Everything that you would need for your program, we have available to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for a great teleconference. I've been on your webinars, been interested for a year or so. Just had a little rotator surgery on one side. I'm recovering from that, and I'd love nothing more than just to get back to full performance, back to my my weightlifting career. I lift, swim, run, racquetball, and gosh, I just don't want any of that to disappear.
Of course not. Of course not. Well, thank you for your question, and I hope we helped. And stay on the call. Let's see if we have some other questions, and hope we'll be able to take care of you, Keith.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Carrie?
Our next question is going to come from Herb Iwer. Your line's open, Herb.
Yes, hello. How are you doing today?
Great.
Let me give you a little bit of my background. I'm a doctor of pharmacy. Until recently, the owner of 3 small respiratory care hospitals in the Midwest. And following Cenegenics for a couple of years. It's interesting. And a couple of questions is, one, is there contraindications to your program? And 2, I know you talk a lot about even literature about lab tests and things like that, but do you do the semi-invasive things that a normal man of 55 would be getting this time of life, like colonoscopy, et cetera?
Bob, I'll let you answer this.
Okay. Our mission is to not interfere with the disease-oriented system in any way. We believe that that there are many things that they do in the disease-oriented system that are perfect. So we do not do invasive diagnostic procedures like colonoscopies or stress tests or nuclear scans or echocardiograms or anything looking for disease because we're more interested in, we understand that your insurance probably will cover those things if need be, And if it's from a preventive medicine aspect, if we find a need for it, we would just as soon not increase the cost of our program, but allow you to say, well, you know, it would be valuable. You are 50. You need to get a colonoscopy. So we follow traditional medical guidelines with women and men as far as screening devices, but we don't do them in the evaluation.
Okay.
And if you had another
the
question?
reason we don't do them is very simply, you know, you can go to any other system and find that. What you can't find in the other system is the part of it that we do best, which is the continuing care. The reason we're successful is we have the continuing care that the other systems don't have. I don't care whether you go to Mass General or Hopkins or Michigan or UCLA, you're not going to get the continuing care that we give you. So we put our effort in the continuing care and not so much in the invasive procedures that we very well could institute, but we've chosen not to.
Okay. So if those other kind of things come up
Yes.
as you're working with patients, do you work with other general physicians in the
Yes.
community? Or,
Yes, we believe that there should be two systems of medicine, and if you have a disease-oriented physician, we not only embrace them taking care of you, but we would love to collaborate with them in every way. So we're always open to conversations and sharing our knowledge, and we often do with the physicians in the community. We want that relationship where they understand more about what we do, and we allow them to do what they do without interference.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate your question. Carrie?
Okay, our next question is going to come from William Martin. William, your line is open.
Okay, this is Bill Martin, a 74-year-old retired veterinarian that admires your program a lot, because I feel like that we need something of the same thing in the veterinary world. But I am cantankerous enough till I would like to try to mark the expense off of taxes. I may get in trouble with Obama and the IRS, but I think that I will try it and see, because it is a wellness program.
Right. Right. You know, we have a lot of patients, Bill, that, you know, take their expenses from Cenegenics and use that as a deduction on their income tax. So
Yes.
I think
But they create HSAs. They create systems where they put money aside from their income for their health, so that they can pay for programs like Cenegenics. I think it's very legitimate to do that.
You called it HSH?
HSAs, yeah.
health
Health
savings
savings
account.
accounts.
Okay.
Your accountant can talk to you about a health savings account.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Well,
Any more questions, Carrie?
At this time, there are no further questions in the queue.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of the participants, and most of all, thank Dr. Willix. And I believe that Carrie has an announcement at the conclusion of the call. Carrie?
Thank you for calling in. Please take advantage of our March Madness special. Secure your executive health evaluation by March 18th, and we will take $500 off the cost of your evaluation. Scheduling your evaluation is easy. You can call Dr. Mickey Barber directly at 843-724-7272. Again, the number is 843-724-7272. Email her at mbarber@cenegenics-carolinas.com. That's MBARBER at CENEGICS-CAROLINAS.com, or register online at www.cenegenicscarolinas.com. That's www.cenegenicscarolinas.com. www.CENEGENICSCarolinas.com. Cenegenics Carolinas is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, you can reach Dr. Mickey Barber directly at 843-724-7272. Email her at mbarber@cenegenics-carolinas.com or register online at www.cenegenicscarolinas.com.